Welcome, listeners. This is Sanjog Aul, your host, and the topic for conversation is mastering the highly distributed workforce recipe. So, here's the scenario. To maintain continuity of operations and to retain talent, most businesses are now supporting remote work arrangement. Most employees are working from home in isolation and trying to develop a brand new rhythm, some work habits, and striving to be part of a team that learns, innovates, and solves problems together. So, what are the business and IT leaders doing to offer a connected, collaborative, and secure environment, making it conducive for the remote workforce so they can continue to deliver on business priorities moving forward? To discuss this, I have with me Klara Jelinkova. Klara is the Vice President for International Operations and IT and Chief Information Officer at Rice University. Hello, Klara. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Great. So, Klara, here's my first question for you. Remote work is not new, as we both know, and it's just that some organizations are farther along in adopting this remote work culture. So, in your view, what complexities do you see surfacing with remote work as it becomes the norm now?
I agree that remote work is not new, but I think the problem is that the shift is occurring very, very rapidly under a lot of stress. So there was a study done by SAP and Qualtrics and MindShare partners of 2,000 employees across the world and found that 40% of people said that their mental health has declined since the COVID-19 outbreak. And even more alarmingly, a study conducted by Udemy found that 89% of workers are afraid of COVID-19 in the workplace, and their fears have compromised their job performance. And so I think it is managing the stress level, the ambient stress level, that is making the remote work more complex, or the situation that we are in more complex. And as we go through this sudden change, we need to be very proactive about addressing questions about new work culture. Usually, culture takes a while to develop, right? We all have the rhythms of our workplace. But how can you replicate it at home? What equipment can people bring home? What is an adequate workspace? How do we secure the environment? I think those are the types of questions that employers are asking.
Thanks, Clara. It was a great response and a great segue to my next question. While organizations are trying to maintain business continuity and to that end allowing remote work arrangement, how are they dealing with challenges like connectivity, security, and compliance?
I think one of the biggest issues with connectivity is really the problem of digital divide, which is something that we have been dealing with in the United States even for quite a period of time. Just give you an idea, at Rice, for example, we had to address issues of students not having access to high-speed internet because there are parts of the United States that do not have high-speed internet. We don't actually have even cellular connectivity that is adequate for remote teaching. And so we needed to install satellite connections for our students to assure their success from home. So I think connectivity and addressing some of the disparities that we still have even in this country regarding access to high-speed internet is going to be important. I think we as technology leaders really need to worry about how do we enable people and how do we equalize the playing field and not create a workforce and environment where that is accentuating these historical inequalities and prevents people from being part of the new digital economy. On the security side, we obviously need to go beyond perimeter security and kind of that more network-based model into more of the zero trust model. I think a lot of us have been going into that direction for quite some time, but I think there's more need to do that now because the perimeter security is really reaching its limits. Now, I would never say that you should throw away your VPN. You should absolutely keep your VPN, but adding some identity-based control is going to be really important. And as you all know, we have seen increased amount of cybercrime in the COVID-19 world, whether or not it's sending coronavirus-related phishing emails or hacking of home Wi-Fi networks to gain access to corporate networks. And really, the approaches range from security awareness training, which for us is mandatory, to multi-factor authentication for all remote connection, to private network VPN use, obviously, and stringent password requirements. But I would not forget about something as basic as backups, because with ransomware on the rise and people being remote, we really need cloud backup solutions that allow to really do backups in this remote environment. And you asked also about compliance, so allow me just to say a few words about that, because I think what is interesting for many of us, we are keeping more data about our employees than we did before, whether daily symptom checks, so contact tracing, be it manual or automated. As we are supporting the workflow of workforce through this transition, they're bringing new aspects of compliance and security that are connected to knowing more about people than we have known before. Let me pause there.
So, Klara, remote working arrangement has definitely helped deal with the personal safety concerns for employees. But what are the employees expecting in the context of a conducive working environment that would keep them engaged and productive, and which will also help with effective teamwork? And what is preventing organizations from meeting such expectations fully?
I think it's important to realize that a lot about the workplace is about connection, right? It's about connections that people create with each other. And I think the new expectation is for employers to stay in touch with employees remotely. I was surprised to find out that Confera did a very interesting study that showed that 99% of respondents felt that employers are showing more empathy towards staff, and that is having a positive impact on the workforce. I think those types of things, showing empathy, showing humanity, is very important. Or we need to realize that the organizations are getting a little bit flatter. People expect to be closer to their leaders, and in some ways, there is a bit of a equalizing force when we all look like little Brady Bunch squares on a computer screen. I think one of the issues that can be highlighted in remote work are kind of more persistent issues that companies had, such as lack of communication or training or onboarding challenges. And I think what we will see is that organizations will have to address them much more rapidly. So what we have done, for example, at Rice is assuring that managers meet with staff on a weekly basis. It just made that a mandate. We have town hall meetings in the organization that have gone from quarterly to monthly, and believe it or not, we have 80 to 90% attendance, which is much more than we were remote. But even in these town halls and manager meetings, having the format be more open, allowing people to ask questions, and again, using those meetings to show empathy and understanding, thanking people, recognizing that they're dealing with a lot, recognizing them and their contribution, and creating this community and people feeling valued and included, I think is a really important part of the recipe, beyond just the technologies and collaborative technologies that we have all deployed quite effectively, I would say.
Let's take a quick break, listeners. We'll be right back after these messages, and let's talk about the technology tools that are available today, which allow remote workers to connect and build relationships with your customers. Are they really working well? Where are the gaps? And how should you be managing your technology product and service partnerships? Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is CTN Viewpoint on CIO Talk Network.
Welcome back. So, Klara, let's talk about the technology tools that are available today, which would allow remote workers to connect and build relationships with customers. How well are they working, and where are the gaps? And how should an organization go about rationalizing and managing its technology product and service partnerships for the best outcome?
We all have CRMs to manage our customer base. So we call it a student system, but it's basically a CRM. And I think that these have been equally as effective in the remote workforce or in this remote work environment, but are even more important, right? Because information sharing and CRMs are becoming really the hub from which customer activity or for us student activity occurs. Whether or not we use different web conferencing technologies and you can take a pick, They all are quite effective. But again, I think the main gap that we face is the creation of community, right? How do you have people come together? How do they share experiences? It's not the same through web conferencing. And I think the other piece that is important for people to realize is what is the change that we have forced on people in how much more technology they have to consume now and how seamless it is. So for us, we use three core technologies. I'm not going to mention them, but we use essentially kind of the three core technologies that people use, and we really honed in on their proficiency with that technology. And that kind of abstracts away whatever technological issues people may have because they learn it, they're all using the same suite and can focus on interaction.
Klara, so in your response regarding technology products and services, you mentioned CRM. And for the tools for the employees to connect and collaborate, you said there are a bunch of them, so take a pick. But how does one figure out who to pick and then build a strong partnership with them so it serves as the strong foundation for this remote work arrangement we are going for?
Yeah, we have been fortunate because we already had those tools in place. So we were already kind of prepared for those. But when we were going through the selection, we always involve our end users in the selection process. So whether or not it was our CRM or a learning management system or a web conferencing tool, we always involve faculty and students in the selection to make sure that the tool works for their specific use cases. So it does not end up being an IT mandate. And that approach has been very effective for us. As far as developing a relationship with the specific vendors, we have not experienced that as an issue because usually the vendors are very happy to engage with you as a client if you're kind of willing to join, whether or not they have an advisory group or something like that, and have your voice heard.
So, what culture and process changes would enable employees to work and take accountability for learning, problem solving, and innovating during the current crisis, individually and collectively?
You bring up such a great point, which is in the remote workforce or the remote work that we are all part of now today, right? There's more need for employees to be accountable and to be kind of self-motivating because again they're largely working separate from their colleagues and their managers even though they're maintaining a connection with them. I think investing in time management tools and time management skills, one of the things that I believe we have done successfully, we had our HR department give people tips and tricks and how to manage their tasks, how to prioritize, how to think about prioritization of tasks, and how to manage interruptions and the interruptions that people are dealing with on a daily basis. I think it's important to be realized because schools have been out in most of the United States since March. Staff are really dealing with interruptions related also to students having students at home, their children studying from home, and how do they manage those interruptions effectively? How do the rhythm of work that has been disrupted, how do you inject some sort of a rhythm into that working from home time? We were very successful in providing basic guidelines for our staff. It has nothing to do with technology, but it was about prioritization of tasks, managing interruptions, being flexible in time, realizing that sometimes people need to work earlier, sometimes they need to work later, expanding the workday so people can deal with midday interruptions a little bit better. So I think that has been very helpful to us.
How should we ensure that while the employees get all the tools and hopefully a conducive culture, they truly enjoy meaningful work, but not a whole lot of work, so that there is no burnout as they meet deadlines?
Yeah, I think this is a very interesting question because in some ways we are living in a time where each individual employee needs to take more responsibility for their work habit, for their work situation, for managing their careers. I think for a long time we have been talking about people needing to take more ownership of their careers. But I think working from home or working remotely and the COVID-19 crisis has kind of accentuated that need on the part of our employees. And managing burnout in some ways is something that we need to actively engage with our employees on and in a conversation about, right? Because, for example, for us, we said it was okay for people to push back and say, hey, I really cannot do this. We also started to monitor whether or not people are taking their vacation because we were really concerned. Usually people take vacations in the summer, and we had people who were not taking vacations. And so we're really making sure that people are taking time off. In addition, to make sure that employees were staying safe, we added additional sick leave and expanded our sick leave policy to make sure that people would stay home if they were not feeling well and would not come to work. So those are the types of tricks that we use. But I think empowering the employees and saying, you really are in charge, you are more in control than you think, is going to be really important. And by the way, I think that change is going to be permanent, because that is the shift that we have been seeing as part of the change to a knowledge workforce.
So finally, what type of commitment, investment, and ongoing support do we need from our company leaders so our remote workforce adapts to this new reality successfully?
I think transparency is probably the most important, because as the world becomes more uncertain and people are experiencing more uncertainty in their day-to-day lives, they really at least want to have more visibility into what is going on. So we are dealing with a very complex set of situations that are rapidly changing. And so increased transparency is really important. I think also kind of embracing management styles that bring out the voices of everyone. So even if those voices are divergent, and try to mediate among divergent voices is really important, because in some ways the predictability is simply not there. So sometimes engaging in conversation with employees and working things out in a conversation is very helpful. And we have been using, especially our management meetings, to give people a space to voice their concerns and then for us to respond to them. Again, the permission to push back is really important. But I think what really can differentiate an employer is empathy, and showing empathy toward employees, understanding the complex situations that they are in, and being accommodating while also communicating what are the limitations that the company is experiencing. So, for example, for us, we have certain employees that care for students that are living still on the right campus. Those employees need to come to work, right? It is important. So those are our limitations, but we can then engage in a conversation with them about how to do it safely. How can it be enabled? What technologies can we put in place to make them feel safe?
Once again, thank you, Klara, for sharing your thoughts and insights about how business and IT leaders can master the highly distributed workforce recipe.
Thank you for having me.
And listeners, I invite you to find related conversations on our website at CIOTalkNetwork.com.